Well, Greg, it's good to be with you today. I've caught up on season four as much as I can be. Really enjoyed the season so far, and obviously wanted to get your thoughts on it, coming from the showrunner himself. Tell me maybe the perspective from the writers, the producers, about what makes this season different and why you all enjoy it so much.
Well, I think, we season four, which is, a great privilege to be able to be around that long, presented some opportunities that based on what we had done. We had gone through this kind of the team gets together in season one, kind of understanding their past in season two, season three, fighting and hopefully exterminating a lot of ghosts that had been haunting them. So season four felt like a blank slate in a lot of ways for the team. What could they do? Where could they go? We loved the road trip aspect of season one. We liked the horror that we also had in season two, which we kind of moved away from. And we wanted to go both in a need to have a villain that was less terrestrial, and because our supers are so super, wanted to really give them challenges. And it felt the supernatural and the horror would be challenges for our team. So we went in that direction. And that was the kind of driving force. Blank slate, chance for the family to really kind of explore what they mean to each other and grow and not look backwards as much. Because even though season three was in a different terrain in Gotham, it was still dealing with a lot of the ghosts of the past. Season four felt like we could move forward. Of course, something from the past does rear its head, but not one you could expect, or not one that if anybody had been in a confessional booth in season three, they would have never guessed this was coming.
I feel like every season has its own standout characters. Who do you think that would be for season four? Who's really shining right now?
Well, clearly we've put some emphasis on a couple characters who haven't had a spotlight on them in a while, or haven't been singled out to have a big storyline. I wouldn't say, though, that was the driver for the season. The driver for the season was to emphasize more on family, because we had so many things that pulled them apart, and will always be a show, to the disappointment of many, that will pull the family apart, because I don't think it's a true family story unless your family's tested. Any good family story is about how the family reacts to a test and whether or not they stay together or not. So that's kind of what's driving kind of us in a lot of ways, to explore the emotional ramifications of that. That said, certainly there are a couple of characters that we're focusing more on than we were in the past. For sure, Gar, for sure, Connor, and also giving more attention to Tim Drake than we had in the past as well.
A couple people have gone to Twitter asking me, when's part two? Do you have any details that you can share? Or
none? I really want to know. We don't know yet, and I think there's a lot of, it's a rapidly changing time in the business, and this is, this sounds like the CNBC summary of it, but there's a lot of balls in the air for everybody, and we're just making the episodes and polishing them, and then hoping people will like the back half as much as they seem to have enjoyed the front half.
Yeah, and you mentioned the business is changing. Obviously, we're seeing a new Warner Brothers Discovery leadership with James Gunn, Peter Safran, and there's a lot of ambiguity, but a lot of hope, I think, for the future of DC and the DC universe and the connectivity of all the different platforms. Yeah. And I think a lot of fans are hoping that Titans is part of that future and is connected with the live action films, other TV shows, the animated. Do you have any hopes and dreams that DC Titans can be part of that? And what are your hopes for that?
For sure. I mean, who wouldn't? We have so much pride in our show and put so much effort and care and love into it that we would love to see these characters continue on and expand the family and the universe of Titans. It's such a vibrant, fertile ground for storytelling and for these characters. And I like you said, it moved very well. There was a great transition from the animated version, where so many people have an emotional attachment to now this TV/movie looking version of it. And I could see it continue to expand and spinning off characters having their own shows. No one's calling me and asking me yet what I think. And so all we can do is make these episodes and make them as compelling as possible. And that's the best argument we can make for us.
One big thing I think that at least part one has been touching on a little bit slightly, but I think more than in seasons past, is the fact that Superman is alive and well. There's a statue of him outside of Star Labs. He's going off on the satellite to go save a planet. And it's something we haven't seen before. Titans brought Bruce Wayne to the fold, which people thought would never happen. Bruce Wayne on a TV series, but here we are. Could it be potential that Superman or Clark Kent or something could happen on Titans? Is that something that you all are looking into?
We would love it. I mean, I think that the stories that we could tell would be fascinating and would really, well, certainly open up different areas of exploration in terms of the emotions of the stories that we want to tell. You know, I think it's a big ask. I'm not sure anybody's up to asking yet, but you know, you can always ask. And you know, I think there's the movie, the feature world of the Superman space. There's a lot of conversations about that, and I think that they would probably, you know, be rightfully proprietary for that right now. But you never know. I mean, let's just say that we hint as far as we can, as much as we can, at the presence of Superman in our show this season, even beyond what you've seen. And I think it's one of the fun things. There's a couple winks to it later in the show.
That's awesome. Obviously the show is into 2 parts. We are still waiting on part 2, as you mentioned. Kind of talk about the creative decision to not just release them all at once, release them weekly, but instead, why do you think you guys release them in 2 parts? Any thoughts there?
Well, you'd have to ask HBO Max that. That was their decision. We don't have much of a say in that, though we weren't against it. I like the idea of keeping it fresh. I mean, there's something about watching shows in smaller chunks that you don't get burnout on a show. And I know as an avid TV watcher myself, 6 is a great number to watch for a while. 12 is a big commitment straight through, and especially if you can't binge them. I mean, binging is different. Then you could just roar through them and it's really fun, right? And I love that as a fan. But if you can't do it in the weekly, which I love the weekly too, because it creates more anticipation and buzz, and you can talk to your friends, and you know, White Lotus comes out once a week and you're like, oh, what's next? So it's fun. It puts fun back into TV watching instead of just, you know, this extended, intense couch session. So I'm all for it. And the break, we don't know how long the break is. Hopefully people come back as excited and engaged as they are right now. That's why we put a cliffhanger. One of the reasons we put a cliffhanger in there, which we haven't done. We've done little mini cliffhangers, but we've got a couple along the way.
I think another thought that a lot of fans are having as well, not only you're waiting for part 2 of season 4, but you're waiting, is there going to be a season 5, a season 6? And you and I talked, I think, after season 3 came out, and obviously there was a lot of talk about season 4, but it was still a little hush-hush then. Season 5 was kind of in the far distance. Any thoughts on that? Are you all hoping to make a season 5? Is it in the works? Are you writing it right now? What can you share with me?
Writers are taking a little hiatus, and I'm finishing up the post-production of season 4, getting notes from the writers and the producers as we go through and finish it up. So that's where our focus is right now. I'm assuming fairly soon there'll be some kind of discussion about season 5 on a creative level. Right now, we have thoughts that we've kind of brewed internally about what we could do and how we could keep it fresh, and you know, what villains to use and what areas to explore and where we want to go. But they're all preliminary right now. We're going to wait to see whether or not we get that season 5 pickup. And like almost every season with Titans, we won't know until we know, and then they ring the bell, and then we start going.
Well, let's talk about the villains a little bit. Season 4. Obviously, we're seeing Brother Blood kind of come to be. Mother Mayhem. We've brought Jinx to the fold as kind of anti-hero that ends up being very, very helpful. Talk about their dynamic and what they add to the show, and how is Joseph Morgan kind of coming to the team of Titans?
You know, Joseph's such a skilled actor and takes the role so seriously. It was just a delight from the very beginning to work with him. Focused, intense, you know, intelligent, and demanding that the material, not in a bad way, but you know, certainly wants the material to be equal to what he believes that the character should have, and rightfully, I think so. And a lovely guy on top of it. So you're an incredibly skilled actor who's fun to work with. It's been a real gift to work with Joseph. I'm so grateful for him, and I really love what he does with Sebastian and where he goes with it over the course of the season. and working with him as a writer and a producer and as a director as well. Just I would do it 10,000 times again. And same with Lisa, coming in and working with her, and Jinx, just another pro who brought so much of a spark and energy. Where Joseph brings the humanity and the suffering of that individual in terms of Sebastian, Lisa brings the spark and punk rock energy to the character, and a problematic person in Dick's past, and someone who can get under his skin pretty easily. And that's always fun to watch people get under Dick Grayson's skin. And I know Brenton loves it as well. It's just another color to play, and less paternal and more somebody who's kind of has another personal life, and how that past comes back to him in a funny way rather than a terrible way. So she brings a real kinetic, vibrant energy to the show.
Well, you mentioned the word paternal, and so I got to ask about Dick and Kory and these visions that now both of them has had that they've had. We've seen them both come into play, and I think a lot of people are hoping that that's the future.
Dick Grayson has always had a soft spot for Kory, but he's had other, I don't know if you've ever been in that spot in your life where you just simply do not have the bandwidth to take a relationship as seriously as it deserves. And I think that now we've always saw this season as a two-hander in terms of the two of them, taking control of the team and guiding people. And they're very comfortable with each other. And that leads to potential for intimacy and the ability to kind of, forge a deeper bond. So, I know when I read and we hear how much and how badly the fans want these two characters to get together. And reading in the books, boy, did they get together. It's hot and heavy. So we're aware of that, and we're working with the relationship that we always feel needed to be grounded and right for the time for them to do it. But it's if you were an innocent just watching this from the outside, you'd be like, wow, they like each other. Let's see how much.
And obviously we kind of see that teased in part one. Is that going to be one of the main focuses for part two, possibly?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, how could you not? That energy is not dissipating. They've got to figure out how to get out of the situation they're in right now at the end of episode 6, which is not easy. And their foe is formidable. And so there's not a lot of time to sit around on our show once you get the big bad in to look into each other's eyes and get gooey, because there's a big problem to stop. But, that kind of conflict that they're facing allows for that attraction to grow.
Well, another person that's having some major problems is Gar, and he's confused about what's going on. There's this otherly world that he's being drawn to, the Red, I believe it's called. Talk about that. Talk about the inspiration for that, where these thoughts came into for making his creative process of him kind of dealing with these otherworldly things. And I mean, it's been a really awesome thing to see Ryan Potter and Gar kind of take this journey.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad you think so. I mean, it was overdue, giving a Gar spotlight episode, Beast Boy. We always wanted to move him past comic relief into a character who has his own story. And we've now, it's a good time this season. I mean, going into horror in the spiritual world has allowed us to kind of go into some of the supernatural stuff that both the Red offers, and Gar's character is primed to take a journey through. So the Red offers Gar to kind of go into his own world, a world that is calling him, and that he needs to understand the nature of that calling.
Well, before we go, I do want to kind of keep the spotlight on him for a second. Ryan Potter, I've always thought that as an actor, he's done a great job, and I have always wanted personally something bigger for him, kind of like we've just been talking about. Not only is his acting role kind of enlarging a little bit in this season, but he's also taking on, from my understanding, a producing role or a writing role for one of the upcoming episodes.
He's been involved in the writing of what is called episode 7. It won't air as 7, but with Jeff Johns, of course, one of the original Titans creators of the series, and wrote the books as well. So kind of a grand figure in that Titans verse. And they went and created this amazing story that we're working on right now in post-production. I think the fans will love. Ryan came in working with Jeff with a deep, deep knowledge of the Titans universe and of comics in general. I mean, Ryan's an expert in Titans and has always been probably the most versed of any of the original Titans actors in terms of his love for the series and the kind of how far back it went. So he really understands these characters in an innate way. So he's able to bring that expertise. Also, Ryan's somebody who is a seeker and has explored a lot of different philosophies and religions and ideologies, and so he can bring that as well.
Awesome. We covered a lot, and I think that's all the questions I have.
All right, Matt. Well, great. Thanks for taking the time, and thanks for watching, and thanks for being such an informed fan of Titans, especially this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good luck to you all, and hoping to see part 2 sooner rather than later. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
You and me both, brother.
Very good. Well,
All
stay
right.
well and have a good holiday season.